Alright, we are back with another 1x budget build guide. So if you didn't catch the last one, it was a Doomfletch Slayer Rain of Arrow build. Kind of weird. It surprised me with how well it did. I mean, the clear is great. The character is like functionally unkillable. It's obscene how much leech it has. And just a little update, I had somebody ask me specifically about bossing. I actually went and killed Elder with a Maven Witness with that, and it was smooth. I mean, you have to do mechanics, don't get me wrong, you're not insta-phasing things here, but completely doable. Now that that's out of the way, what do I got for you today? It is a Gladiator Bleed Bladestorm. Now, not the most original idea. It's kind of taken off in popularity because it's for a reason. I mean, it's just super strong, super defensive. So, to kind of make it a little different, I've always wanted to use Rigwald's weapons in a build, so we are actually dual wielding instead of shield in this build. So we've got the Rigwald's Savagery and Rigwald's Command, and what those do, we'll go over that in a little bit. So I know what you're thinking, why dual wield? I like to hit things with two swords instead of one. That's pretty much it. If I'm being honest, the one-hand shield build is just better in every single way pretty much, especially with how strong Jack the Axe is now. But thematically I like the dual wielding, and because you get the extra attack speed from dual wielding, I figured why not go all the way and go challenger charges. So instead of getting gratuitous violence, I'm actually using hemophilias for the bleed pop, and I'm getting challenger charges for even more attack speed. Now you can see in the background, mapping is just, it's so enjoyable on this character. You can hear those bleed pops. Everything's smooth, it's super quick, and it's really not that difficult to play. So basically what it comes down to is you're in sand stance for most of your clear. If you come up to a rare or a boss, you want to switch to blood stance because it gives you a huge bleed damage bonus. And then I am also using corrupted blood, so I'm hitting that every few seconds. Usually you don't even need to use it unless it's single target because everything just blows up. But it's a pretty straightforward playstyle and very safe. And you can see that in this Chimera clip here. I'm a genius, obviously. I hadn't played the character in about a week, and I just threw a map in. I didn't even look at the mods. So you can see we've got crit damage, monster damage, boss damage, boss attack speed, which right there, it turns them into Super Saiyan. And then on top of that, it was Maven Witness. So this was like the worst possible Chimera fight I could have. The only thing that would be worse is if I had like Frenzy Charge on hit, he would be even faster. But you can see he still died. I'd love to say it was deathless, but it wasn't. And if I'm being honest, I'm kind of surprised I killed it because I was playing very poorly, but I still had 2 or 3 portals left. So very, very resilient, I guess you could say. Real quick, I'll go over map mods to avoid. They're all pretty obvious. Physical Reflect, player reduced chance to block, and monster chance to avoid bleed. Real quick, this is the raw currency I had dropped from 70 to 90. You can see all total is about 1100 chaos. If you take out the 2 exalts, it's still around 900, and then the map in there is worth 50 chaos that I hadn't sold yet. So before we get into items and skills real quick, just like my last build guide, the POB will have the gear I used on this character as well as kind of suggested stat weights. So if you're unsure what stats you need to get on your gear, I'll include that in the POB. Now since this has the one-handed shield in it also, there is a separate tree and separate gear for that. And then there is a leveling tree as well. Starting with weapons, obviously since this is the dual wield, we'll be using the Rigwald's Command and Rigwald's Savagery. Now, the reason I chose this, aside from just liking them, is you can see this one gives damage over time multiplier while wielding an axe, and it is obviously a sword. So the other weapon is an axe, and then it also gives maximum rage while wielding a sword. So with this, we have 75 max rage. So because I was also having a little bit of mana issues, I am using this replica jewel right here, which gives another 5, which is more physical damage multi over time. And then it also has the negative mana cost. So that's the main difference between the dual wield and the shield, is that we will be using rage in this setup, whereas in the shield build, we will not. Moving on to the chest, really there's no required chest. So basically all I did here was I found a base for about 20 chaos that was 6 linked. and then I hit it with one of these, and I got one T1 resist, and that's pretty much it. I did get kind of lucky in the hybrid life, but really it's just 100 life and then the T1 res, and then I crafted another res on it to kind of fill in where I needed. We'll go over the helm and gloves kind of at the same time here. So helm, you really just want life and a lot of resist. Nothing special there. This one has accuracy rating on it. Now, I don't have hit cap on this character with dual wield, which is bad. Never do that. However, if you run the one-handed shield build, you'll have resolute technique, so it doesn't even matter. So if you want to go all in on the dual wield, I would get accuracy on the helm and then try to get it somewhere else, like on your rings or something. But aside from that, big life, big res. In the dual wield setup, because I do not have this gratuitous violence node, I chose to go with hemophilia. You can do this with a one-handed shield build if you want to, but typically, because the base damage with the one-handed shield on the bleed is so much higher, this 20% more really makes a bigger difference. That's why I chose to just use rares with the one-handed shield. And again, with the rares, just big life, big res, and make sure that you have flat physical damage to attacks on your gloves. So I am just now realizing how bad my jewelry is recording this. I'll start with the rings because this is usually how I shop. I get my rings first because it's cheaper to get a lot of resist on rings as opposed to amulets. And typically with a lot of builds, your amulet is where you're going to get more output and more throughput than you would on your rings. So big res, life, flat fizz. Those are the three you need. Make sure it's got flat fizz on it. Now this one's got intelligence on it. You shouldn't need it. The reason I need intelligence is because I'm stupid and the helm base is like an int strength hybrid. So you can see it needs 91 int. So even with 36 on my ring, I had to get a stupid amount on my amulet to be able to wear it. So this amulet is garbage. It's giving me flat fizz and life. That's pretty much it. The max all res is okay, but I'm really questioning why I even bought this in the first place. It had to be just because I needed the int. But you can see there's no anoint because it's corrupted, and I don't even know how much those new oils are. But yeah, don't get garbage like this. Flat fizz, life, resist, and then you can get attack speed. It doesn't help your bleed damage per second. It'll help you stack it a little bit more, but for a budget, just get those three stats. All right, now we got boots. So the other reason I do rings first for resist is you can get some pretty good boots with 30 or 35% movement speed for cheap if it doesn't have high resist. So these, I think these were like 5 chaos. I'd have to look. I actually forgot to mention earlier, the path of building actually has what I spent on each individual item in it on the gear used tab. So if you're curious, it was like, I think it was 115 chaos total, but you can see movement speed, life, and I went with a strength on this one because it was pretty cheap from what I remember, and strength is damage and HP, so no downsides there. For our belt, we got a Stygian Vise here. I would always try and get a Stygian Vise because that jewel socket is so powerful. These can get really expensive really, really quickly. That's why I leave it till the end because I don't want to have resist on there. I'd rather have a lot of life and stats. The other thing to watch out for is if you see one that has like the majority of the stuff you need and it's got an open prefix or suffix, just craft something on it that'll be helpful to you. That'll save you a lot of money too. So again, life and resist, strength is nice if you can get it. Jewel socket, flat fizz, life, and then if you couldn't tell by the other video, I love phasing. I think it's incredibly necessary, especially for ultimatums, because you can get body blocked so quick by all those rares. So this is what I would recommend. Always, always, always have phasing. All right, and finally we got our flask here. So since we're dual wield, we're not actually block capped. You can see 56, 56. So I run roomies just to get closer to the cap. If you wanted to run a different build and kind of do, you know, violent retaliation, it would be good. I mean, you'd get to block cap, you'd get more damage. It's just personal preference. I just don't like running this. I tried it for a few maps and I just found that I was never really over like 2 or 3 stacks because things were dying so quick and I wasn't getting hit. So that's why I don't run this node. We got a silver flask for more movement and attack speed, always needed. Get a freeze on this one or your quicksilver. Just make sure you have the freeze immunity. You should have that in every build. We got a quicksilver. You could run warding on this if you hated curses. If I get like a Temp Chains map, I just reroll over it. I don't even bother with it. We got a Witchfire. Now, I'm probably going to get roasted for using this, but it's more damage. You know, Lion's Roar and stuff like that doesn't actually affect your bleed damage. So there's very few flasks that will actually give us bonus damage. And the Evasion and Smoke Cloud, it's pretty nice actually for ultimatums. So I kind of really like this flask for this build. And then finally, Corrupted Blood. We move quick, so make sure you have Corrupted Blood immunity. If you can get on a Jewel, even better, and then you can run something else here. If you have an Onslaught Jewel, you could run a Phasing Flask here for the extra dodge. It's completely up to you. So skill-wise, nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary here. We'll start with the main link. So we got Bladestorm here, obviously. So with the dual wield, like I said earlier, you're going to be using Rage. Whereas with the one-handed shield, you won't. So it's up to you what you want to replace if you run the shield build as opposed to this one. If you are running the shield build, I would just swap out Rage for Fortify so you don't have to worry about it ever dropping, because currently it's on my Leap Slam. So we got Bladestorm, Ruthless, Deadly Ailments, Brutality, and Melee Fizz. Now, there are kind of some things you can do that aren't ruthless. Like if I was going to swap Ruthless out in the dual wield, I would just put Fortify here. But again, it's up to you. And also with POB, you can always sim your character to see which is the best because it'll tell you. We got Leap Slam and Fortify just for moving around, making sure I have Fortify for boss fights. Typically, while I'm mapping and stuff, I don't even really worry about it, but it's there anyway. So we got Blood and Sand because we are Gladiator, so we're going to be swapping between those a lot. You get more damage in Blood Stance and more area effect in Sand Stance, so that's good. Cast and damage taken, up to you if you want to use Steel Skin or whatever. It's your call. I just use Immortal Call to give it that split second to kind of recover my health back up to full. We got Blood Rage, always good on a physical build. Give us Frenzy Charges, more life leech, and attack speed. So Flesh and Stone, again, we're swapping stances all the time. If you'll notice, a lot of people link this with Maim for the extra damage, but I don't because I couldn't fit it. You can kind of see in my mana pool is kind of low already, so I couldn't fit it. So what you can do is down here, I've got an Ancestral Protector. So this actually doesn't give us much damage. It doesn't give any bleed damage whatsoever. It just gives more attack speed. But I've got it linked to Maim, so we get that bonus. And then Culling Strike, so it kills something when it's low health. We got Vulnerability here just for the Self Curse if you need it on bosses. If you're doing like T13, T14s, they're going to die before you run out of charges on this, so I wouldn't even worry about it. But if you're doing like serious bossing, you'll need Vulnerability there. We got Dash and Second Wind. I would always try to run this if you can because the startup animation for this is so smooth that even if you're like on chilled ground, it's like instant. So I always try to have that. And it's really nice for moving through your ultimatums a lot. So Pride, huge damage bonus for us, especially since we're like always in melee. And our final link is Corrupting Fever here. Now, you don't have to run this. I just figured, it's new. We'll try it, see how it goes. It ends up being like 140,000 DPS or something, so it's nothing to laugh at, but it's not necessary. So we've got Corrupting Fever, Brutality, more physical is always good, Swift Affliction, and then Empower Support. Now, most people are actually running Efficacy in this spot, but because I don't plan on you guys having a lot of int in this build, you won't even be able to use Efficacy because I think it's like 45 or 50 int for level 1. So that's why I chose Empower. Until Empower is level 3, Efficacy is more damage, but Empower ekes that out a little bit at the end, but it's such a small issue, it doesn't even really matter. All right, thank you for making it this far. I really appreciate it. If you've got any feedback at all, please let me know in the comments. If you didn't see the last video, basically my goal is doing one of these a week. Hopefully they're all this successful. I can tell you I did a trap reap build that I'm working on right now, and I'm like a level 85, and I think I'm just going to call it. I honestly think it could clear T16's, and I'm going to record kind of attempt at it, but it's just not fun, and that's okay. If we fail, and that's totally fine. I think that's something people don't realize happens a lot, especially with the bigger, you know, content creators, is like not every idea is a good one. So I'll make a separate video for that. But any feedback, please let me know. I did have questions asking for like more mid-range, like 10 to 15x build guides for these. I'll start working on it, but honestly, for this one, there's so many guides out there already that probably the easiest thing would just be to check like PoE Ninja or anything like that, because there's no like hidden mechanics or anything with this. It's just very, very straightforward. And with how popular it is, there's thousands of guides. But I will start working on that, because I know that was kind of, I think I had like 10 people asking me for that. So that is something I'll start doing in the future. But aside from that, thank you again, and I'll see you next time.